Thank you so much, Reverend Sue and Reverend Mary, for having me. Aren't they wonderful? Thank you, thank you. And thank you all for being here and letting me be in your amazing space. Great to be here. I had no idea about this community, and it's a lovely place, and great, sweet people are here that have made it such a great stay so far, or already, I should say. So thank you. My name is Dane Stevens. I am a trauma specialist. I had no intention of becoming a trauma specialist. And I would like to share with you today the journey that I took, was taken on, that brought me to where I am now, and with what I'm teaching you now. And it has been a journey, there's no question. It's made my life very clear and very obvious in that way. And once again, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me. When I say the word trauma, people tend to think of big physical or emotional experiences, maybe a car crash, or somebody who had experience of war, or was severely abused in some way. And these are all traumas, there's no question, and they're called big T traumas, as in you know that something happened to you. You have a pretty good idea that you've been traumatized. There is also what is called a little t trauma. And these ones aren't so easy to spot, and these are the tricky ones that get in our skin and we don't know it. A little t trauma might be something like living with a high-functioning alcoholic. And if we were young, growing up with a high-functioning alcoholic, we wouldn't even have any idea that we are actually at the receiving end of abuse. But this person using alcohol as a way of self-abuse, in a sense, is passing that on to us. And we have to alter our behavior, or we do alter our behavior, and for the most part, a belief about ourselves. So another one could be somebody who grew up, they have OCD, and a parent of ours or one of our caregivers has OCD, something that literally has nothing to do with us but affects us. One is neglect, and something like neglect, it seems like nothing happened, and really that's about right, nothing happened. But because of that, we maybe formed a belief about ourselves or had to alter our natural flow of energy, our natural self, and therefore a trauma was formed within us. And there's one that probably not many can identify with here, and that's dysfunctional family dynamic. Not many people can identify with that one, but in growing up in a dysfunctional family dynamic, that's just the way it is. So that's life. But we didn't know that it was affecting our natural flow, our natural and authentic self from coming out when we altered our behavior. So the reason I say this is because you'd be hard-pressed to find anybody that doesn't have some degree of what is considered trauma looping within them. And the story I'm about to share with you is really, it's everybody's story. It's the story of healing and coming home. And sometimes I think that that's kind of what we came here to do, is to find our way back home. I think inevitably we're going to find our way back home, but the process that I work with now kind of shows us how we're creating our life and ultimately how to find our way back home. So I invite you to find out or ask yourself where this fits for you in your life. It started for me in my early 20s, this journey I've been on, and it started with a relationship, which is pretty common. A lot of people have had that heartache or heartbreak that really affected them in a big way. And growing up, I was a very black and white person. If I couldn't touch it, taste it, feel it, smell it, wasn't real, I didn't know I had a spiritual bone in my body. So when I met somebody who affected me on a deep emotional level, I didn't really know how to handle that very well. I fell in love, I think I was 21, I believe it was, and these emotions were new to me, and I didn't know how to deal with them very well, and being a new love, a new relationship, it had its immaturities. It had its passions and its excitement, it was fiery, and it also had its immaturities of the inability to communicate, blame and jealousy and all the stuff that comes with a new relationship. So we were in love, but we fought and broke up and got back together and fought and broke up and got back together and fought and broke and got back together. Broke up and got back together. And it came to the point where we had to either say we're going to do this or we're not. So I did the only obvious thing and I gave her a ring. Seemed like a good idea at the time. The relationship did end a number of months later. And the irony of that for me was that I became a complete wreck. And I say irony I say that because I was the one who induced the breakups most of the time. So when we finally broke up, for me to be a wreck didn't make sense to me. And I thought, what kind of a hopeless romantic am I? Well, what's going on here? And near the end of the relationship, we started to see a marriage counselor. And I was hoping that we'd see a marriage counselor so she'd continue on and get the help that she needed. That's not the way it worked. I ended up staying on with this marriage counselor because I was such a wreck, and she introduced me to meditation, which was a huge thing in my life. And I'm a huge meditator today, as we all should be. So I started on meditation. But I was very much, like I say, a wreck. And I left everything with her, and we lived in a condo, and I left everything. And I moved into a picker shack. I had a friend of mine and their family owned orchards, and they had a picker shack. I don't know if anybody knows what a picker shack is, but it's a little shack in the orchards where the pickers stay, and it's about 200 to 300 square feet, and it has a bedroom and a kitchenette, and that's about it. So I was so emotionally drained, I was having trouble even going to work. But I learned this meditation really grabbed me, and I was meditating, in pain, but meditating for hours and hours in the orchard and in its picker shack. And in that time, something happened to me. I had an experience where I literally saw the crystal within me and discovered life within me. It's been called a satori, an instant awakening, where I discovered life within me. And it was a huge experience. One of the biggest experiences in my life. But I was still very much mentally and emotionally drained. So I had this great thing going on, but I was still a mess. So being a mess, what I understood, what happened during that awakening was a remembrance. And what I remembered was an experience of being sexually abused between the ages of 6 and 8 years old. You can't forget about something like that. It was so overwhelming, it was just too much for my young mind to comprehend and deal with, so I literally just shoved it out of the way. I just tried to forget it, and I did. I managed to forget it. It was just too much for me. And the brain's MO is survival, so it will push things out of the way, and that's exactly what happened. So when I had this great experience, my whole life came up, and this remembrance came up in front of me. And what I realized was these crazy emotional feelings that I was having in this relationship were actually this 6-year-old. And that's where I put that together and realized that this bleeding soul isn't just from this relationship. So being in a horribly wounded state, I went back to my roots, went back to my family, and I didn't even know that my mother had been part of the CSL for 2 or 3 years. And she had not told me because I was such a black and white person. She figured I would negate it or poo-poo it, and I probably would have. So she didn't tell me about it and didn't invite me to any of the services or anything. But she saw the condition I was in this time and figured, well, maybe this is a good time to introduce him to this teaching. So she took me to a service. And that was in Calgary, Alberta, Canada at that time. And Reverend Arlene Bump was the minister, for anybody who's a long-time CSL. Actually, it was RSI at that point, and she was actually the president. And I remember sitting there. I went for 4 services, and it was like she had a spotlight on me, and she was talking just to me. And I hung on her every word for up 4 services. It was my time to wake up. It was my time to awaken, and that's what was happening for me. I feel very fortunate that I was introduced to this teaching because I was so raw and so vulnerable. So to be introduced to this teaching that is so open-minded and open-ended was such a blessing, and I really did embrace it. After that, I took all the Science of Mind classes. I ended up teaching the Sunday school. I took over the teen group, and I got very involved. I even ended up opening the services for Reverend Carol Carnes, who became the minister a few years later. So I learned all about the Science of Mind and how to manifest, and really created a great life for myself. Fast forward 10 years later, I had moved to Vancouver, Canada, in BC, and created a coaching training business, had great employees, I was making great money, I was doing some traveling, living in a place just off the ocean, had a vehicle of choice. Life was good. Everything was going exactly the way I wanted it to be, right where I wanted it to be, except for my relationships. And as I looked at my relationship, my lack thereof relationship, I saw it was the same pattern that was going on previously with my fiance. I was breaking up and going to somebody else, breaking up and finding intimacy elsewhere. When I realized this, I then wondered, have I dealt with this childhood abuse thing? So I had to go and check it out. And I went to some different groups, and that didn't quite resonate for me. I did a bunch of counseling, both just talk therapy and just adult, some other things, and nothing seemed to really work for me, get it for me. So I was then referred to a healer therapist, she was highly recommended, and I was open to anything at that point, so I went to see her, and she assessed me. And anybody who knows the body as an energy system, she said I had a circ in my lower chakra. And the energy systems are just the different chakra systems of the body. And it made sense that I had a circ, which is like a block or energy cycling stuck in my lower chakra. So that made sense. And a number of sessions in, and she wasn't cheap, but I was doing great financially, so I wasn't concerned about it. She asked me if I'd like to break this circ, open this circ up. And she talked about it as hitting a home run, and who doesn't want to hit a home run? So I said yes, and what that meant was basically forcing this trauma out. I knew nothing of energy or trauma at the time, so I ignorantly said yes. You never force a trauma out. That's exactly the wrong thing that you do. That's exactly what you don't do. And she said it would break, and it did break a number of sessions in. She had me on the table, twisted in some different positions, and at one point I remember her telling me to go there, and me not even knowing which way was up. I was just in the ozone. And it did break. And when I got off the table, I was scared instantly for no reason. It's like I'd been plugged into a 220-volt outlet, and I was electric. And I assumed it would subside. I just assumed it would stop and things would calm down and go back to normal. And it didn't. It kept going. I felt unstable inside. I was fearful, and for no reason, just this energy, just jittery platelets. The inside, being the creator of the outside, as we know here, the outside started to mirror what was going on inside of me. And I started to lose clients and contracts, and I lost the sale of a business. And I wasn't rich, but I had money. But within 18 months, I went broke. Within 3 years, I was homeless. She quit seeing me, of course, because I ran out of money, but more so because she didn't know what she did and didn't know how to fix it. So I was a mess hanging out there. I'd lost everything. I was sleeping in my car till I lost that, and I was sleeping on the beach. And at one point I took a construction job, and was working construction, and then we'd leave and I'd go back to the unfinished house and sleep there in the night and then leave early in the morning and come back again. I was grabbing for anything to hold on to, and I couldn't hold on to anything. I was in free fall. So I went on a mad search, of course, to find out what the hell happened, how to get my life back. And it took me 5 years to find somebody who understood what happened to me. Ironically enough, because she had the same thing happen to her. Hazel, who's out of Los Angeles, is a trauma specialist, so I guess that's how we're made, apparently. she's a trauma specialist, and she explained to me what happened or how we work in our nervous system and how we process things. She explained trauma to me. She is a student of Peter Levine. Anybody know Peter Levine? Yep, a couple people. And he is kind of the father of inner child work, really, in that way. He's the father of trauma, I should say. But I learned about the nervous system, and I learned how we process information. So I got some real hope in seeing Hazel, who had gone through what I've gone through, and be doing well. That gave me great hope. And I also had understanding because I learned how the nervous system works and how we process things. So it gave me some hope. But I did not get the relief that I needed. I still had my nervous system revving out of control. I was still unstable and scared, basically. So I still kept looking. It wasn't until I ran into Dr. John Bradshaw's work. Anybody know Dr. John Bradshaw? Yeah, there's the inner child, father of inner child work. And I started to do the left-right brain process that he has brought forward. And I made an interconnection. And it was a very exciting time because I literally connected with that fearful part of me that was scared. I made the real connection. I knew it was there. And I did this work on my own, trying to unfreeze this part and trying to let it feel okay and let it come into safety. But it wouldn't happen. I couldn't quite make it happen. I did it for 8 months on my own, and it ended up being like a fight with myself. I couldn't get this part to feel safe. I was trying to force this part to feel safe. I was not doing it right. So I looked for somebody who knew this type of work who could help me with it because I made the connection, knew it was there, I just needed some help somehow. I scoured the internet and phoned counselors. Don't know how many counselors and therapists I phoned, and nobody did the work and nobody would do the work. I even tried to talk people into doing the work and with me, and nobody would do it. It was about a year, and literally across the street from me, I discovered somebody who did this work. And Mary Hoffman had done this work, so she said she would do it with me. And I worked with Mary for 2 months, and in that I gained traction. And traction is a consistently healthy and positive relationship with the life within you. And I managed to gain traction with that part, and then I took the work over on my own. This is now, and after I started to do the work on my own, the process I now teach just flowed out of me. It's very on purpose, obviously. But it wasn't efforting, it wasn't something I tried to do. It just happened, it just flowed out of me. But I no longer have any of the anxiety, any fear. My Annie B right here, we're going on 8 years in a relationship, and it's just been right. I no longer have any of those relationship issues. And when the big part that happened through all this is when we heal these parts that have a belief in separation, when we bring them back into present time, when we bring them back into where it's not happening anymore, we create space within ourselves. When we create space within ourselves, what happens is our natural and authentic energy begins to flow again. We get to be who we are. You can't skip the inner work because I say there's nothing to do. But when you do the inner work, when you connect to that inner life within you, and when you learn to become your own source, when you learn to give yourself what you didn't get at that time or what you're not giving yourself, and that's when the healing occurs. It's in the connection to that and relationship with that is the healing. And that's what creates the space that brings it into this present time where it's not happening anymore. But the real exciting part about that is then there's nothing to do. You just let your natural energy flow. And what comes through you is your nature. Your nature is peaceful. It is powerful. It is abundant. It is creative. It is beautiful. That's your nature. And when I say your nature, I mean it's effortless. We don't have to try to create any of that. That is what we are. That is our hard wiring. And what I've learned through this work is all these areas in our life that appear to be out of discord, that are negative patterns, whether it be addiction, whether it be a chronic condition, whether it be your health, your wealth, your relationships, or just your self-esteem. Any of these areas, if you have a negative pattern in any of these areas, I can pretty much assure you you have something stuck looping in your nervous system unprocessed. This is the universe trying to get your attention. The name of this talk is called The Spirit of Healing. And the Spirit of Healing is Spirit is going to keep knocking on your door until you go inside, until you answer. Too many times we tune out when we should be tuning in. In North America, around the world, but in North America with our, I don't say our medical system, I don't want to blame in that way, but we tend to want to get rid of things. If we don't like something, something doesn't feel good, we try to get rid of it. We ask the question, how do I get rid of this? That's the wrong question. That question says that's wrong and it's bad, and it's not. It's not wrong. It's life working perfectly. It's showing you what's going on inside of you. And it's not bad because it's trying to take you inside. This is the segue. This is the opening to higher consciousness. The question to ask is, what is this? The question, what is this, takes you inside. And that's where the healing occurs. So I challenge you to look at and embrace the places in your life that are out of alignment, where you have a negative pattern. Where is the negative pattern in your life? And I want to say that this negative pattern in your life isn't bad and it isn't wrong. And don't try to get rid of it. Embrace it. This is the universe trying to get your attention, and what this part needs is your loving attention. And this is where it really brings it all full circle, because when you go inside and you give this part what it needs, you become your source. You are God. And when you give this part what it needs, the outside mirrors it. It has to, because the outer world is just a feedback system showing you what you're thinking, what you're believing, and here's the big kicker, how you're treating yourself. So we're going to show you how to gain access to this inner life. And when you gain access to that inner life, and it may sound easy to give yourself what you need, it's amazing how many people cannot show up for themselves, cannot show themselves compassion, cannot let themselves off the hook. And this is where you get to see, in no uncertain terms, that you are creating your life. And for some people that sounds like a statement of blame. And I don't want it to be a statement of blame, but when you understand that this cycle that is looping within you is what's creating the negative pattern, the addiction, the self-sabotage, the eating disorder, whatever it is in your life, when you understand what's going on inside of you, that's where you take responsibility and you go inside and learn how to give yourself what you need. You become your source. When you become your source, you no longer look for love out there. You no longer look for your success in your job. No longer look for your achievement in money. And does that mean you don't have any of that stuff? No. But when you give it to yourself inside, then it can show up. If you can't give yourself the attention you want and desire, don't expect it from out there. If you can't give yourself the respect that you deserve, don't expect it out there. It can't come. If you can't give yourself the love that you want, desire, and deserve, you can't get it out there. Life is an inside job. And that's what this shows you. So I challenge you to take a look at these places in your life and now see them as openings, as opportunities, as segues to Spirit wanting to come through you. And when you are able to give yourself what you need, when you're able to bring these parts back into present time, your natural energy flows. Your soul, your heart, your soul opens up, and you become who you are. and who you came here to be, what you came here to do. And it's easy. The job is on the inside. That's just the effect. And watch the result when you change the inside. When the inside changes, the outside changes. There's nothing to do. So I invite you all to come to the workshop at 12:30 and learn how to connect within to give yourself what it is that you want. Give yourself what you need because you deserve it and you can have it. And the choice is up to you to go inside. Tune in. Quit tuning out. Tune in. Thank you all so much. I appreciate you very much and love you very much. And look forward to seeing you at 12:30, I hope. Thank you.